If there's a hot-button issue brewing at the State House, like rent control or tax cuts, you can generally expect State Rep Mike Connolly of Cambridge to be staking out a position to the left of most of his colleagues. In fact, after the 2021-2022 legislative session wrapped up, Connolly was one of just 3 state reps singled out as exemplary by the group Progressive Mass, which gave him an A+ 100% rating for those years. But now Connolly is facing possible expulsion by the Boston Democratic Socialists of America for, among other things, endorsing Maura Healey for governor, twice supporting Ron Mariano for House Speaker, and deviating from the DSA's national platform on housing. A vote by the Boston DSA on Connolly's proposed expulsion is scheduled for Sunday, July 23rd. And Mike Connolly joins me now. Rep. Connolly, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Before we talk about the current situation that you are in, I want to ask you, why did you become a member of the DSA to begin with? And what does being part of that group mean to you? What does it mean to you?
You know, I became a part of the group because I believe we need to transform society. We have overlapping emergencies right now that we are facing, whether that's the ongoing housing emergency, the opioid epidemic, where we saw more deaths last year than any year before, tragically, the ongoing climate crisis that gets scarier by the day, the MBTA disaster that I'm very engaged in addressing. And I believe that the way we address these ongoing emergencies is to organize, is to do activism, is to bring people together, and is to fight for systemic change. And I certainly believe democratic socialism is an important way that we can get there.
One of the, as we mentioned in the intro, one of the briefs against you brought by the Boston DSA is that you endorsed Maura Healey for governor in the last election cycle. You endorsed her about 3 weeks before Sonia Chang Diaz, who was running to Healey's left and, like you just said, advocating for a big systemic change, about 3 weeks before she ended her campaign. To what extent do you think that this expulsion vote that you're facing is a product of that Healey endorsement, which you made at the time you did?
You know, it appears that some members of DSA are very upset about that endorsement. I think, to be fair, you know, DSA isn't a monolith, and this petition to expel me from the organization is coming from one subset of members. Many of them do happen to be in the current leadership, although I will say throughout this week I've been getting an overwhelming number of messages from people in DSA, all of my constituents, people across government, saying we support what you do, we appreciate you. So it's actually felt really nice to get that affirmation. But to your question, I support Governor Healey. I think she is an extraordinary leader for our Commonwealth. And as a progressive and as a democratic socialist, there may be some parts of some issues where we disagree. And I'm proud to go to Beacon Hill and stand up and make the case for where progressives or socialists may disagree on certain issues, while at the same time keeping in mind how much we agree on and how much work we really have to do for my district and for this entire state.
As I hear you talk about this, tell me if I've got this right. I've been trying to wrap my brain around this back and forth that you're in the midst of, and my sense is that you like the idea of transforming society and politics at some fundamental level, but you also believe that it's necessary to work within those systems as they currently exist to move in that direction. And my sense from the public statements made by your detractors, and we asked them for additional comment, they have said that they're not providing it for the time being, they're letting their previous public comments stand on their own, that they are less amenable to the idea of working within existing systems in an attempt to transform them. From your vantage point, is that a fair characterization of what's going on here?
You know, I think generally, obviously we could get into the nuances for hours, but I think we have to remember Democratic Socialists make up 1% of the Massachusetts state legislature. I'm proud to be one of the few DSA members on Beacon Hill, and I recognize we need to work with others in government to deliver for our communities.
The other state rep who I believe is a DSA member is Eric Eiderhoven, right? Rep. Eiderhoven.
Yes.
And we've had on the show a few times. Is there anyone else who I'm missing in the legislative firmament, or is it just you and Rep. Eiderhoven?
That would be my understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
Has she weighed in on this episode as it's unfolded, either to come to your defense or to agree with the people who are concerned about positions that you've taken?
I mean, we've spoken personally. I'm not sure if she's made a public statement yet.
Okay. Do you expect that she will, or do you not have a sense of that?
I don't have a sense of it.
Okay. Another gripe, and if you want to tackle any other criticisms that were made publicly of you, I'm happy to have you do that. But one thing that I found interesting is that you were accused of, I think, being too willing to see landlords as a part, at least some landlords, as a part of the push to control rent in Massachusetts. You've been a big proponent of rent control or rent stabilization. But the statement from Boston DSA said that I think you for example, were working with a group called, don't want to get it wrong, Landlords for Affordable Housing,
yes,
or something to that effect. Is that part of it, that because DSA sees capitalism as inherently exploitative, for some DSA purists, you shouldn't work with landlords at all because to be a landlord is, from their vantage point, just beyond the pale and not something anyone should be?
You know, I think that apparently is the critique, but, you know, I'll say, you know, so there is this group that's emerging. It's called Landlords for Affordable Housing. One of my constituents is organizing it, and I think this is incredibly strategic because the truth is, all over my district and all over the Commonwealth, many landlords support affordable housing. Many landlords support reasonable rent control. And so if you're thinking strategically, how do we win rent control for Cambridge, for Somerville, for Boston, for cities that are interested in it, I want the debate to be all of us as a society calling for housing justice and maybe a few voices in the real estate industry pushing back against us. And I think that's better. I think it would be better for us to say we have landlords who support this and landlords who don't support this. So, you know, we want to avoid walking ourselves into an us versus them situation, and we want to seek common ground wherever we can find it. And so I embrace the fact that many landlords will support rent control, and we want their voices in this discussion.
It's probably worth noting, as many viewers will know, that right now rent control's prospects on Beacon Hill looks to be an uphill climb to get local control or local permission to implement rent control to make that a reality. So there's a ways to go.
Sure, yeah, and I would say if it looks like an uphill climb, it's because we need to come together. One of the charges I'm facing is supporting Mayor Michelle Wu's rent stabilization efforts, and I think she's done an extraordinary job building consensus on the Boston City Council, and I think what we need to do is unite everyone who supports ideas like rent control and work together to advance the issue. And if we fail to do that, then we'll keep hearing that the issue is dead on Beacon Hill.
All right, Rep. Mike Connolly, thank you for coming in to talk this through. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.